Welcome to another episode, Chat Sports Talk, and welcome to another video in terms of college conference realignment. Seems to be a very popular theme. Now, this is one that a well-known voice of college football, especially for SEC, Josh Pate, he put this out on Twitter. I will never call it by its new name. And unfortunately, this has been like a week and a half ago, 2 weeks. So I've had some other issues with that. If you've seen my other video, you see that I've struggled a bit with this. Plus, I've also went through my head and kind of went one direction, and then later on, I revamped it. So it took me a little while to get the graphics all up and going, and I expand upon the idea that he created. Now, his vision that he calls his perfect college football conferences looks very eerily similar to something I've seen before. I think I've heard it before somewhere. I'm just not sure where that could have been. That's right. I've done one before where I just did the conferences were at 10 members. And now everyone was at 10. Now Josh, he actually shrank some down where 10 was the limit, but he had a conference in there at 8, and he only did power schools. He didn't do the rest of Division 1, so he is definitely one of these that frowns upon, there might be a bad choice of words there, of the group, the rest of the FBS. His number one priority is the SEC. That's where he knows the most of. He's very knowledgeable, very knowledgeable. I'm not doubting his credentials at all. But he favors SEC. That's fine. If you look at a lot of supposed sportcasters supposed to be neutral, they favor one over another. And sometimes personal bias does kind of filter in. You guys see around me, I do have a few allegiances to certain conferences and programs. My prior number one has always been Notre Dame. But I try to be neutral in the aspects of that. I try to give more voice to the group than the power, because I know the power always has the biggest voices. They have, the most money to back them up. Getting sidetracked. Nothing against, Fibon or Josh Pate or Herb Street or anyone else that does college football, talks about college football. Everyone has their biases. I'm not down on that. I'm going to look at his conferences. We're going to look at them together in case you haven't seen that already. There's been a few spin-offs of people talking about that, and nothing really else kind of transpired. And I'll go and nitpick it a little bit, because that's why we're here, and give my own spin and expand upon that. Kind of revisit my, one of the conferences were at 10 and kind of uses Josh's format and just moved it forward. Let's go ahead and pull up Josh's perfect conferences he has set up for the power conferences. And all in all, not that bad. I mean, if you look at it, I think no one really would be really upset. There might be a few nitpick things here and there. But in general, I don't think there's going to be much pushback. The only thing I have is, why is Northwestern Vanderbilt independent and not in the Big Ten, SEC respectively? That right there, I have issues with. I think Penn State needs to be pulled out of the Big Ten to get away from Michigan, Ohio State. They've proven they can't get over them, and then they go into another conference. But in general, about 80% of this I kind of agree with. So I'm just nitpicking at this. Switching some things around is like, if Maryland's not going to be part of the Big Ten, putting them back in ACC. Lee Vanderbilt and SEC, South Carolina's out. So a few things like that. And you kind of see where some of these are going. I do question Rice being up here. I do question UConn being up here. But in general, like I said, about 80% of this I do not disagree with. So let's go pull up my edition. Pull this back up. Now, our Pac-10s do not differ. I think this is how the conference should be. I thought this is where I think they were peaked. If the Pac-10 was going to expand, I thought BYU and Utah would be the two. It said they went Colorado, Utah. But anyways, once again, use his formula. 10's the limit, 8's the minimum. Go from here. The Pac, like I said, the Pac-10 didn't change between us. SEC, there's no South Carolina. Vanderbilt's in. Back to what SEC was prior to expanding to 12. The Big Ten, all the members there in the Big Ten prior to expanding with Penn State. ACC, this one's a little tricky. Went back to the 8 members they had prior to adding Florida State. So Maryland's back in here. They are founding members. So like Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, NC State, Duke, Wake, Clemson, Georgia Tech, and Florida State. And also bring in the U. Bring in Miami to even it out. Kind of get Florida State and Miami as your 2 premier football programs. Clemson's definitely up there as of recent. And a couple other ones have had flirtations with it. Back to Big 8. But instead put in BYU and Utah in there instead of the Oklahomas. That's part of the original Big 8 right there. The Southwest dipped back into some history with the Southwest. We'll put Oklahoma and Oklahoma State both in here. They were both members of the Southwest Conference until they ended up leaving and ended up forming the Big 8. Also left in Arkansas, Baylor, Houston, TCU, Texas, A&M, and Tech. Yes, it's a very Texas Central conference, but that's pretty much how it was at the beginning. Anyhow, even though they want to start off with LSU and Ole Miss, and just never panned out. And he brought back the Big East name. I left that alone, said, okay, that's basketball-only conference. It went back with the idea a step before the Big East added football, when Penn State was looking to create a brand new conference on the East and looking to grab those independent programs there like Pittsburgh and Syracuse, Boston College, Rutgers, Temple, and create their own Eastern Conference, kind of rival, like the ACC in that aspect. So they bring in, Penn State, Pitt, Boston College, Syracuse, Rutgers, West Virginia. These are all the programs that are going to be in there. No Temple. They're probably going to do the same thing they did with the Big East in our time frame. Initially joined and got the boot. Probably bringing Virginia Tech. That'd be a great regional rival. South Carolina at that time frame was also kind of floating out there. Bring them in on, and also have some interactions with some of these programs from the old Metro Conference. And also bring in Cincinnati and Louisville. And this will be your Eastern Athletic, which I think very viable as well. Gives Penn State some good things. And the independent program. Still have Notre Dame's independent, even though I personally don't think they belong independent. I think they belong personally in the Big Ten. But Big Ten's not going to go past 10, so that's where they're at. And then this is where I also put the service academies. All 3 of them will now be independent. No conference tie-ins. Also have some of the conference battles they have, like the Air Force with some of the Mountain West programs. And another conference you'll see here, Navy still have their matchup with SMU and Notre Dame every year. So I think the service academies being independent is a good indication there. Now, Josh stopped there. I will not. I actually went further and actually have conferences at 8 with the possibility of them going to 10 with some other SCS call-ups. So, let's go ahead and look at the American UCF goes back to the American, so they're not going to be a power school. Go back with South Florida, East Carolina, Memphis, Rice, Temple, Tulane, Tulsa, and UAB. You notice that Charlotte, Florida Atlantic, North Texas, and UTSA are no longer part of the American. We'll see where they kind of end up later. The MAC, this one kind of went back and forth a little bit, but Ball State, Bowling Green, Central, Eastern, Western Michigans, Kent State, Miami, Ohio, and Toledo were always in there. I always question whether or not to put Northern Illinois or Akron, and depending on how it's going to develop another conference, ended up keeping Northern Illinois in there because they were actually in there, left, then Akron came in, and then Northern Illinois came back. So that's what I did. So I kicked, Akron, Buffalo, and UMass, all members of the MAC now out. You'll see where they round up here. Here are the few. The Mountain West, to get them to 8, I actually took them down to 8. They already lost Air Force. There's a few others there. We'll have Hawaii, San Diego State, Fresno State, San Jose State, Boise State, Utah State, what state this conference is coming into, Nevada, and UNLV. There's their 8. They get to 10, Montana State. They all have familiarities with a few of these programs back in the old Big Sky days, so not much of a stretch. Now, one of the newer conferences I'm going to bring up is the American West. And this is where some of the American athletic teams kind of went off to, and some of the Mountain West teams ran off to. So from the American, this is where you have North Texas, UTSA. From the Mountain West, you bring in New Mexico, Colorado State, and Wyoming. Also from Conference USA, bring in Louisiana Tech, New Mexico State, and UTEP. Now I'll give you your 8. This one, New Mexico State, and UTEP. All three of them have rivalries. They're now all conference games. Make everyone happy. Decent programs in here that make UTSA happy. Because we looked at last year's standings and put them in this format, UTSA, New Mexico State would battle for the conference title, which I think would be kind of an interesting setup. And then to get them to 10, North Dakota State, South Dakota State, give them 2 powerhouses. I think this will be a very good conference right there in the middle of the country. Then we head over to Conference USA, what's left of them. So they'll keep Delaware, Jacksonville State, Kennesaw State, Liberty, Middle Tennessee, and Western Kentucky. They bring over Akron, Buffalo, and UMass from the MAC. And the 10th member is another call up to the FCS. I hear up in Eastern Kentucky, but I can see Chattanooga, maybe Western Carolina, Furman. I mean, there's a few of them you could probably throw in here, but I think Eastern Kentucky, throw them in there because they have a rivalry with Western Kentucky. Now that it becomes an FBS conference game. Now, the last 2 are very similar because they're both come from the same conference. They just kind of split it up. The Sun Belt gets split in half by their divisions. So the Eastern will keep the Sun Belt name, so App State, Coastal, Georgia Southern, Georgia State, James Madison, Marshall, and Old Dominion. Bring in from the American, Charlotte and Florida Atlantic, and bring back Florida International and round off the Sun Belt. All 3 of those previous teams were once members of the Sun Belt at one point in time. Now they're all back, one big happy family. They made up, and here we go. And then the Western teams end up forming the Gulf Star, which is a former Division II, short-lived conference. They have some of these members that are in this conference now. We're founding members of that conference. So from the Sun Belt West, Arkansas State, Louisiana Monroe, South Alabama, Southern Miss, Texas State, and Troy. Bring over from Conference USA, Sam Houston. And then call up from the FCS to get to 10, Central Arkansas and Stephen F. Austin. Stephen F. Austin and Sam Houston have the long-standing rivalry all the way back to the Gulf Star Original Conference. So that's how I looked at that. Revamped my 10s to this new current format. like I said, for me, I didn't really dislike uh, Josh's take on the power, the seven. If you're a fan of the boys, you know what that means. I just had a few, you know, head scratching, like why is Rice up there? I understand they're one of the founding members of the Southwest Conference. You know, that's one of the things I kind of threw, scratched my head. Northwestern Vanderbilt being independent, scratched my head about that one, especially with all the rivalries Vanderbilt has in the SEC. Why would you do that? In these formats, I still have 8 conference games. That's the max. So that way, when you have 2 undefeated programs, because they don't face each other in conference, there's your conference championship. Still have your conference championship games. And you just kind of go from there. I mean, like I said, I don't think anyone would be totally disappointed in these setups, either mine or his. It kind of goes back to the old school of some of these conferences and the long-standing rivalries a lot of these schools have. And some of these go back hundred years. I'm trying to do hundreds of years. Now, gosh, we have a bit. College football hasn't been around that long, but some of these have, like I said, long-standing. I mean, the South oldest rivalry between North Carolina and Virginia. Make sure that's intact. Deep South oldest rivalry between Georgia and Auburn. The Egg Bowl, Iron Bowl, Bedlam, the game, the Apple Cup. I mean, you name your rivalry, it probably has a long-standing history. And going back to 10 members ensures rivalries maintain. Go back to what made college football great. The pageantry, the rivalries that these things come up with. Plus, you have 8 conference games. You give you 4 non-conference games. You can still do Clemson, South Carolina every year. Georgia Tech every year. Kentucky, Louisville every year. Iowa State. These are still happening because of the rivalries. Nebraska and Oklahoma make that an annual matchup. Bring that back. I mean, I remember those going at it in the old Big 8 days back in the 80s, where these two were always sitting on top. Notre Dame can go back to taking on Michigan State, Purdue every year, as well as USC and Stanford. They can always make sure they get a game in Texas and Florida every year. I mean, I don't see the dilemma in some of these games. Does that mean the conferences don't make as much money television-wise? Absolutely. Would this ever happen? No. The current state of college sports would never go back to this. Never. Um, you might see a split, probably like 10 years down the road when the Western teams of like the Big Ten realize this ain't working. We're going back. We're breaking away. And maybe get, some of the Western programs, the Big 12, to break away and reignite the pack once again. But I don't see that happening for like 10 years, at least a decade before that actually splits because of television contracts. I don't see the viability of mega conferences because look what happened to the WAC. Maybe the WAC did it way too early when they went to 16. But, we'll have to see what happens with the landscape. But this right here, I think this makes complete sense to me. Might make complete sense to a lot of you guys out there as well. Some of you guys were very favorable of when I did this the first time around when I took them down to 10. For me, I think the perfect size is 14 if you really want to get that big, because that still allows you to be able to play everyone at least once every 2 years. You still maintain a lot of rivalries that way, especially doing like a 3-5-5 model. no divisions. You just kind of go from there. I think that could work as well. I like the idea of the tens. Go back to when I was really starting to watch college football, where where the conferences were this small. Made a little more sense. But anyways, what do you think? Do you like Josh Pate's version better, or do you like my version better? I mean, I think either one has their pros and cons, depending, I think, on the needle of how true you want to back to the heart of these conferences you want to go. Do you want to go back to the original state, or do you want to go where a little more competitive state? I think South Carolina's more competitive than Vanderbilt in football, but you can't discount Vanderbilt baseball. Just throwing that one out there. Well, let me know down below. Let me know what you think. I'm probably going to get something put together for my college basketball March Madness. Kind of doing my bracket breakdown, what I'm going to pick, and let you know right now, I'm never very good at these. But back to this one at hand. Just let me know down below which one you like better. What would you do differently? So, we can mix it up down below. It really helps generate the algorithm to promote this video out there. All praise algorithm. We always sacrifice for you. Sorry, there's another channel I kind of watch every so often. He kind of does that because every channel on YouTube is based on the algorithms, and always based on how long people view it, interactions, and subscriptions, and all that stuff. So, if you like what I do, hit that thumbs up. It really helps me out. You can also subscribe. Now, maybe subscribe. Doesn't cost you a dime. You hit that subscribe button. Click that bell icon. Turn on notifications. You know next time I post any more content on my channel. And I will see you next time on Chat Sports Talk.